One of the world's most famous antiheroes gets into a cab on the biggest mission of his life. Feeling lonely, Deadpool decides to get out of the back seat and sits next to an Indian driver named Dopinder. When asked why he is wearing that red suit, the anti-hero tells him that he is after some bad guys. He has been waiting for 1 year, 3 weeks, 6 days and 14 minutes to make Ajax, a sadistic and cruel scientist, fix the mess he did to his face. Meanwhile, the scientist is making deals with the head of the military army and selling the mutants he has produced in his laboratory as if they were weapons of war. After the merchandise is sold, Ajax and his men leave. Deadpool is almost at his destination when he realizes that he has forgotten his ammunition pouch. He has only 12 bullets in his pistol and, after saying goodbye to Dopinder, he patiently waits for the moment to attack his target. Sitting on the edge of a suspension bridge, Deadpool spots the villains approaching and springs into action. First, he breaks into one of the vehicles and eliminates all the bad guys inside. The swordsman uses the bodies of his enemies to knock out approaching bikers intent on eliminating them, causing a serious traffic accident. While trying to strangle one of the smugglers, another vehicle with armed men approaches and Deadpool uses his feet to speed up the car, which overturns shortly after. In that instant, heads are decapitated and bodies are thrown against the boards. Images of the accident are broadcasted on the news, and upon hearing the reporter talking about a man in a red suit, Colossus soon realizes that Deadpool is responsible for this catastrophe. Immediately, he abandons his breakfast and calls Negasonic to accompany him to the scene of the accident. Seeing armed men taking over the road, the drivers decide to abandon their vehicles and flee on foot, since the road was blocked after the accident. Armed men surround the car where Deadpool is hiding. Since he has only 12 bullets, the swordsman decides to use them strategically and counts down while eliminating his opponents. Suddenly, a skilled biker appears and shoots Deadpool. While his body regenerates, he tries to put a bullet in the man's head, who eventually manages to escape. Now only 7 bullets remain, and in order not to risk missing the next shots, Deadpool runs between the cars for cover as he approaches his enemies. He takes every opportunity to use his pistol on those guys' heads and causes a big explosion after shooting a grenade. When Deadpool pauses to celebrate his victory, one of the bad guys approaches and machine guns him in the back. Believing his enemy to be dead, the man approaches and is surprised by a bullet to the head. Then the anti-hero finishes unloading his pistol by shooting 3 other bandits who appear in his path. However, what Deadpool didn't realize is that one of his opponents is a mutant and was not eliminated with the headshot. Therefore, the anti-hero needs to resort to the help of his swords to cut the enemy in half. But in order for you to understand how we got to this point in the story, we need to explain what happened 2 years before Deadpool was shot in the buttocks. Wade Wilson, as he was called, ordered a pizza to be delivered to Gavin Merchant's address. The mercenary was hired by Megan Orlovsky to intimidate Jeremy, who, when not at his delivery job, works overtime as a stalker. As such, Wade orders the boy to stay away from the girl and states that if he approaches her again, he will have at least one of his limbs torn off. After resolving the situation with Jeremy, the mercenary goes to talk to Megan and states that that man will no longer bother her. Relieved, the young woman hugs him and says that Wade is her hero. Unhappy at being compared to those good guys, the man leaves and says that he will never be a superhero. Wade considers himself just a bad guy who gets paid to beat up even worse guys. After another day at work, he goes for a drink at the bar Sister Margaret, where Weasel works. As soon as he arrives at the establishment, he causes discord among the customers and a fight breaks out. Without even knowing what is happening, Booth is punched and falls unconscious to the floor. Weasel then walks over to check if the man is still breathing. When he verifies that Booth is still alive, everyone around is disappointed and goes back to drinking as if nothing happened. Minutes later, Vanessa approaches Wade and during their conversation, he asks what he could get for $275. And Vanessa says that for that amount, they can do whatever Wade wants for 48 minutes. Then, since he could choose whatever he wanted, the mercenary decides to take her to an amusement park, where they spend the 48 minutes having fun with various games. However, when time comes to an end, the couple decides to continue having fun, and after that they never parted again. Until Christmas, when Wade asks Vanessa to marry him. On that day, they take a photo together as a souvenir of that special moment. However, minutes later, Wade suddenly faints and Vanessa has to rush him to the hospital. After tests, the man is diagnosed with cancer of the liver, lung, prostate, and brain. Upon hearing the sad news, Vanessa tries to stay strong and talks to the doctor in search of a possible cure for that disease. Meanwhile, Wade watches his fiancée's face intently, as if this is the last time he will ever see her. Back in the present day, Deadpool continues his hunt for Ajax and pursues a mysterious biker, believing him to be his enemy. After knocking him down and delivering a string of kicks to that guy, the mutant removes his helmet and, upon making sure that this is indeed his target, runs his sword through the scientist's shoulder. Between life and death, the man tries to understand why he is being attacked because he still cannot identify who the guy behind that mask is. So Wade makes a point of revealing his identity, and just as he was about to smash the brains out of the villain who turned him into that terrifying thing, Colossus shows up to spoil the fun. As he is thrown away, Deadpool remembers what happened after his cancer was diagnosed, a few days after the test results were released. Wade prepares to be hospitalized, even though he knows that his illness will not be cured. The man doesn't want to stay home lest Vanessa be dragged into that depressing situation along with him. All Wade wished was that his would have good memories when he left. Before being hospitalized, the former mercenary decides to stop by the bar he used to frequent to say goodbye to his friend, Weasel. During the conversation, the bartender hands Wade a card and informs him that the guy sitting at the next table is looking for him. With nothing to lose, Wade decides to talk to Agent Smith and discovers that the man in the suit and tie is a recruiter. The mysterious guy reveals that he works for an organization that can help him cure his cancer and, as a bonus, give him abilities that many people dream of having. Suspicious that the whole thing is a big lie, Wade decides to leave. However, that night, he cannot forget the words of Agent Smith. Just thinking that Vanessa will not have to suffer through his death, the man decides to grab his only chance to be cured. After throwing Deadpool away and saving Ajax's life, Colossus once again tries to convince the mutant to join the X-Men. However, the anti-hero assures that he will never be part of the good guys club and tries to get Colossus out of the way in order to finish his revenge. While they were arguing, Ajax manages to escape, and upon realizing that the one man who could fix his face has fled, Deadpool becomes enraged and attacks the mutant. The big problem is that his blows do not cause any scratches on Colossus. Instead, it is the mutant who is injured, having his fists and ankles broken. After receiving a sharp blow, Deadpool is handcuffed and Colossus intends to take him to the mansion so he can talk to Professor X. As his body is dragged across the asphalt, Wade releases his own fist with a knife in order to escape those handcuffs. He then jumps on the back of a passing truck and manages to free himself from the mutant. Lying there in the middle of a pile of garbage, Deadpool reflects on the decision that led him to that terrible situation. The exact moment when his whole life was turned upside down was when he agreed to participate in that experiment, with a small expectation that he could live a long life with his beloved. Within the very first minutes of entering the laboratory, Wade realizes that he has gotten himself into a big mess, but it is too late to turn back. He is quickly strapped onto a stretcher, and it is at this point that Wade meets Dr. Ajax. Without the slightest concern for euphemisms, Ajax is honest in saying that this experiment will cause unbearable pain, but if his patient manages to survive, he will become an invincible machine. The scientist then injects Wade with a serum that activates whatever mutant gene is hidden in his DNA. However, for the drug to work, Wade must be subjected to severe stress. Each person who undergoes that treatment suffers a different effect. Angel, the scientist's right arm, has resulted in superhuman strength, and Ajax has had his reflexes improved. In addition, his nerve endings have been destroyed, so he no longer feels pain. In the weeks that followed, Wade suffered the most diverse kinds of torture. His body was overcome with adrenaline and driven to the ultimate instinct of survival. Since his mutant genes had not yet manifested, Ajax and his team continued to hurt the man in different and increasingly painful ways. The torture sessions would continue until Wade mutated, or died. Despite living in the biggest hell mankind has ever seen, the man tries hard never to lose his sense of humor and ends up making friends with David Cunningham, another patient who was being held in that place against his will. As a last resort to release Wade's powers, Ajax decides to put him in the oxygen chamber, where the oxygen will be decreased to the point where the patient will feel like he is suffocating. At that point, when he is about to pass out, the oxygen will be increased again, and this will repeat itself for several hours. Before being sent to the greatest torture of his life, Wade discovers that that laboratory does not produce superheroes, but super soldiers, who are controlled by a collar and sold as merchandise. During the weekend, Wade remains in that state of near death, until his mutation finally manifests and he becomes the devil himself. Thanks to the mutation that caused that bizarre and monstrous appearance, Wade's cancer begins to regress. Before being sent back to the oxygen chamber, the man headbutts the approaching mutant to close the machine and manages to grab the matchstick that she constantly carries in her mouth. During the night, Deadpool uses his own fingers to light a fire which, when it comes into contact with oxygen, causes a huge explosion, destroying most of the laboratory. At that moment, Ajax goes there to find out what has happened and realizes that Wade has managed to escape. The man attacks his enemy with all his remaining strength. but gives up killing him when the scientist claims to be the only one capable of fixing his ugly face. Upon hearing this, Wade lets his guard down and Ajax takes the opportunity to defeat him. After knocking down his enemy, the man takes a metal bar and goes through the mutant's body, piercing his heart. Before he loses consciousness, Wade sees his friend, David, tied to the ground with the flames about to consume him. Hours later, the former mercenary wakes up and discovers that he not only got the cure for cancer, he got the cure for anything. However, for him, there was only one thing that really mattered. The next day, Wade went to visit Vanessa, intending to tell her everything that had happened. The man wears a jacket and covers his head with a hood as he chases her through the streets. Wherever he goes, the mutant must face the frightened looks of the people around him. Afraid of the reaction Vanessa will have when she sees him and afraid of being rejected by her, Wade leaves. He decides to find Ajax and have him fix his face before he goes to talk to his wife. In a conversation with Weasel, Wade reveals his plan. He tells him that he will go after the goons who work in that laboratory until he finds someone who will reveal Ajax's whereabouts. His friend then advises him to put on a costume and hide his face. First, so as not to frighten people, and second, so that his enemy will not find out that he is alive. It is at this moment, during the conversation with Weasel, that Wade decides that his codename will be Deadpool. The man then returns home and begins to sew his anti-hero costume. His first attempt is a white sweatshirt ensemble coupled with a mask made from a cotton shirt, which makes Wade look like a real angel of death. However, the problem with this outfit is that after the missions, Deadpool comes home all stained red. Therefore, he decides to adopt another strategy and sews a red suit to disguise the blood. After a few missions, Wade manages to improve his suit and uses the skills he acquired when he was a mercenary to go after Ajax's henchmen, because the scientist had disappeared from the map. Wherever he went, Deadpool collected kills and barely managed to interrogate his targets, as he eliminated them before they even had a chance to open their mouths. After several months, Wade finds the same guy who recruited him trying to attract a new victim. The vigilante chases this guy through the streets and manages to capture him. After some torture sessions, he manages to extract all the information he needs to find Ajax. So Deadpool takes a cab to surprise his old friend, and that is how he meets Dopinder. After that, we know what happened. Injured and disappointed that his plan didn't work out as expected, Wade decides to return home. Since escaping from that laboratory, the mutant shares a home with a blind lady named Al. When he realizes that someone is approaching the door, Al grabs her cane and prepares to attack, but ends up falling to the floor after tripping over the vacuum cleaner. Wade then opens the door and discovers that the old lady was assembling a chest of drawers that has just arrived in the mail. The problem is that she forgot to use the screws, and the whole piece of furniture falls apart. Furious at everything going wrong with his day, Deadpool goes to his room to whine. Meanwhile, Ajax arrives at his hideout and tells Angel that he has discovered the true identity of the man in red. After treating his wounds, the scientist begins to think of a plan to find him before he ends up being surprised again. After taking a shower, Wade gets ready for bed and Al sits down next to him on the couch. The mutant then thanks her for all the support he has received over the past few months. He uses his micro hand to touch the woman's face, who advises him to go after Vanessa. Al believes that if Vanessa loves Wade, she will accept him regardless of his appearance. However, the mutant claims that the old woman is only saying this because she cannot see him. Otherwise, he would understand why he can't go talk to Vanessa until his face is fixed. Hours later, Ajax and his assistant Angel go to the Sister Margaret bar, for it was there that Agent Smith first met Wade. The man interrogates Weasel, but he claims he has never heard of a guy named Wade Wilson. Angel then finds a photo of Wade and Vanessa, which the boy left as a souvenir for his friend before he was hospitalized. The mutant then grabs the bartender by the neck, but Ajax orders her to let him go when all the bar patrons point their guns at them. As soon as the duo leaves, Weasel calls his friend and informs him that the villains are after Vanessa. Desperate, Wade runs to the nightclub where the woman works and enters the establishment looking for her. When he catches sight of her, the man slowly approaches. But before Vanessa could see him, he hides, because even after so many months, Wade is still afraid of her reaction. The mutant runs to the bathroom and splashes some water on his face in an attempt to muster the courage to talk to his ex-fiancée. Wade then comes out of the bathroom and one of the nightclub employees informs Vanessa that someone is looking for her outside to talk about an old boyfriend. The woman quickly goes to talk to this mysterious person and, seeing a hooded man hiding in the dark, believes that this is Wade. However, to his surprise, Ajax reveals himself and Angel captures the woman before she could escape. Since he can't find Vanessa anywhere, Wade asks his friend about her whereabouts and Weasel claims to have seen the woman leaving through the back door. As he leaves the nightclub, The man finds a little gift left by Ajax and soon realizes that Vanessa has been captured by him. Immediately, the two friends return home and Wade is furious, destroying everything in his path. Suddenly, he receives a message from Ajax, which was sent on Vanessa's phone. The man wants to meet him at the junkyard at noon. Deadpool takes all the weapons he finds in the house and puts them in a bag, because he knows that it will not be easy at all to face him. Before he leaves, he states that he loves the old woman and thanks her for having taken him in all this time. Since he is at a disadvantage in that battle, Deadpool goes to the X-Men mansion and enlists the help of Colossus and the teenage Negasonic to rescue Vanessa, since it was their fault that Ajax managed to escape. Once again, Dopinder is summoned to help Deadpool in his mission. This time, the taxi driver must take the three mutants to the junkyard. During the drive, Wade asks if the boy has managed to win Gita's heart. The driver says that he has tried to do so, but Bandu, his cousin, is more skillful and handsome than he is. So, he needs to kidnap him, and at that moment, Bandu is trapped in his trunk. When Deadpool hears this, he is proud of the boy, but he has to lecture him to make him look good to Colossus, who is in the back seat listening to the whole conversation. When they reach their destination, the taxi driver says goodbye to his friend and the trio gets out of the car. As they walk towards Ajax's hideout, Wade realizes that he has forgotten his gun bag in the cab. It is almost noon and Dopinder is gone. So Deadpool decides to do things the old-fashioned way and face his enemy using only his two swords. Suddenly, dozens of armed soldiers surround the mutants and Angel appears to stop them from crossing the barrier. Her mission is to eliminate Deadpool, but Colossus decides to confront her so Wade can focus his energies on saving Vanessa. However, the big guy is knocked down with a single punch and Negasonic needs to interfere. The girl runs towards the woman and throws her away. So Angel orders the soldiers to shoot, and Colossus throws a truck tire to knock those guys out. While the Man of Steel and Angel face off, Deadpool and Negasonic hide behind a mountain of rubble to avoid being hit by bullets. Wade then rips off his underwear to use as a peace flag. When the soldiers have ceased firing, the anti-hero states that he will spare them if they put down their weapons. However, his plan goes awry and the men shoot back. The swordsman has no choice but to attack them, tearing their bodies in half and severing their heads. Meanwhile, Colossus and Angel keep bickering over which one is the strongest and teenage Negasonic helps Deadpool get to the second floor of the junkyard, where Ajax and Vanessa are. She uses her powers to hurl the swordsman into it along with a metal plate. When he finally comes face to face with his enemy again, Wade spots Vanessa trapped inside the oxygen chamber and promises that he will save her. When she realizes that that masked guy is her ex-fiancé, the woman is furious and Ajax cuts off the oxygen in the chamber. The man takes two axes and attacks Deadpool. They exchange a few blows and Wade throws one of his swords into the chamber so that the oxygen from the outside can get in. Since he has only one sword, Deadpool is at a disadvantage and has his second sword destroyed by Ajax. Now he will have to fight totally unarmed. Meanwhile, Colossus continues to get beaten by Angel, who uses a metal cable to choke him. With the help of the sword, Vanessa manages to free herself from the restraints that hold her in the chamber. Deadpool and Ajax are still fighting and the scientist pulls out a small knife that was hidden in his opponent's suit to attack him. After throwing Wade away, Ajax pierces his head and continues punching his face. Just then, Vanessa manages to get out of the oxygen chamber and uses her sword to stab Ajax in the back. Because his brain has been pierced, Wade is unable to stand up, much less think clearly. Seeing Vanessa lying on the ground, he begins to imagine little cartoon creatures around her. Then, Ajax gets up and attacks the woman. In an attempt to save Colossus, Negasonic uses the full strength of her powers, causing a huge explosion that destroys the entire perimeter. By this time, Deadpool has managed to recover from the damage to his head and attacks Ajax while trying to prevent Vanessa from being crushed by the containers. As the second floor is falling and their bodies are sliding down, Wade decides to put the woman back in the oxygen chamber so that she is not destroyed by the fall. When Colossus sees that everything around him is collapsing, he takes the two girls and runs away. Just then, the whole place collapses and the chamber where Vanessa is covered by debris. Minutes later, she is saved by the mutants and comes out of that disaster practically unscathed. Wade appears next, and just when he thinks he has his happy ending, Ajax appears and attacks him. They both roll out of the rubble and, at the first opportunity, Deadpool breaks both of that man's arms. He claims that the scientist will fix his face, and upon hearing this, Ajax begins to laugh. The man claims that there is no cure for Wade, so he will have to live with that ugly face forever. That being the case, Deadpool takes the small pistol that Al gave him and intends to use it to blow that guy's brains out. However, Colossus appears seconds before the vigilante gets his revenge and tries to convince him to make the right choice. While the mutant gives his speech about being a hero, Deadpool pulls the trigger and finishes his mission. After throwing up all his breakfast, Colossus and the teenage Negasonic watch from the sidelines as Wade tries to explain himself to Vanessa. The woman is furious at having been dumped and punches her ex-fiancé several times. When she finishes taking out all her anger, the man asks her forgiveness for leaving without saying goodbye and never coming back to tell her what happened. Wade explains that he was afraid to talk to Vanessa, because the guy under that mask is not the same guy she remembers. The woman then removes the mask and is confronted with Wolverine's face. After removing the second mask, she is startled by what she sees, but says that after a period of adjustment and a few drinks, she will be happy to kiss that face. The mutants are surprised by Vanessa's reaction and Wade orders them back to the Xavier mansion. Before he leaves, Colossus states that one day he will be able to bring him into the X-Men. Apparently, Vanessa didn't need much time to get used to her beloved's new appearance and kisses Wade desperately, just like old times. In the week of his dating anniversary, Deadpool travels around the world eliminating the criminals of a powerful international organization, until after taking out the entire Asian cartel, Wade returns to the United States to get the last leader of the faction. Despite being alone, when he arrives at the criminals' base of operations, Deadpool makes a real clean sweep of the narcotics lab. Cornered by the chatty mercenary, the leader of the criminals named Sergei Valoshenkov runs into a kind of bunker and just watches from the security cameras while Deadpool eliminates all the men in the lab. After eliminating the last criminal, Wade goes to the entrance of the bunker and asks Sergei to leave, but at that moment, reinforcements arrive and Deadpool is forced to run back to Dopinder's cab. Since he is late for his anniversary, Deadpool asks Dopinder to drive him home where Vanessa is waiting. To celebrate the anniversary, Wade hands his girlfriend an arcade token, a souvenir of their first date, while Vanessa hands over her birth control in a box, signaling that she now wants to have a child. Happy with the idea of becoming parents, the couple begins to discuss what names they will give the baby, and suddenly Wade realizes that there is someone outside and asks Vanessa to hide, which prevents her from being hit by a shotgun blast that the intruders take at the door latch. Just then, those thugs who arrived to help Sergei earlier enter the apartment and start shooting everywhere, but Wade manages to eliminate them one by one with the kitchen knives. After eliminating the criminals, Wade asks Vanessa to stand up and realizes that she has come out completely unscathed, but just as the woman comes out from behind the couch, Sergei appears in the doorway and shoots Deadpool, but misses the target and hits Vanessa right in the heart. Wade jumps out of his apartment window and goes after Sergei, but is run over in the middle of the street, giving the bandit a chance to escape. Luckily, a few meters ahead a pickup truck hits Sergei's car, which instantly stops running. Desperate, the man tries to restart the vehicle, but fails and is picked up by Wade, who hugs him in the middle of the street until they are run over by an ambulance. After Vanessa's end, Wade goes into a deep state of grief and spends his days drinking too much and using harmful substances. After spending 3 full days at the bar, Wade goes to his old house where he meets Al, a blind lady who used to live with him. Feeling guilty about Vanessa's end, Wade lies down on the floor and begins to mourn for everything that has happened, while Al tries to counsel him, but as always, Deadpool ignores everything she says and tries to take his own life in several different ways. After failing by jumping into the bear's cage and blowing himself up along with the apartment, Wade ends up in a kind of purgatory where he meets with Vanessa's soul. Happy to finally see her again, Wade tries to reach out to the girl, but realizes that a sort of invisible wall separates the two. Wanting to touch her one last time, Wade begins to call out to her, but Vanessa says that his heart is not yet in the right place. Not understanding what she means, Wade tries desperately to touch her, but is pulled back to the world of the living within seconds. At that moment, Colossus arrives at the apartment where Deadpool is in pieces and puts the parts in a bag to take him to the X-Mansion. After Deadpool has reconstituted his body, Colossus invites him to become an X-Men and begins to explain the rules of the mansion, but Wade steals Professor Xavier's wheelchair to escape and is easily captured by Colossus. At this point, the boy again grieves over the loss of his girlfriend, but when Colossus tries to comfort him by saying that the X-Men are now his family, Deadpool decides that he will stay at the mansion. At the same time, a young man named Russell arrives at the Essex Orphanage, a kind of institute that tries to cure mutants. There, Russell is welcomed by the local director, a complete madman who thinks that people with the X gene are sick and must be exterminated. After realizing that Russell will not be easy to handle, the director takes all the kids from the institute to watch the boy being electrocuted. After spending days suffering at the hands of this lunatic, Russell gets tired of this situation and begins to use his fire powers against the staff of the institute, causing a real panic in the orphanage. When the police fail to contain Russell, the X-Men are called in to deal with the situation and the Colossus convinces Wade to go with them. As soon as he arrives outside the institute that is supposed to protect mutants, Deadpool suspects something is wrong and begins to approach Russell, but the boy becomes afraid and attacks Ellie, another X-Men, who defends herself using a force field. At this point, Deadpool tries to calm the boy down, but since he remains suspicious, the boy tries to strike him and ends up hitting a fireball right in Colossus' chest, sending him flying into the news van. Realizing that the boy is a threat, Deadpool draws his weapons and tries to surrender Russell, but Colossus asks him to calm down and reminds him that the first rule of the X-Men is never to take a person's life, even if they deserve it. To try to follow the rules for once in his life, Deadpool puts away his guns and slowly approaches Russell, trying to gain his trust, but just as he is getting close, the director leaves the institute walking normally, leaving the boy once again out of control. In a rage, Russell attacks Deadpool, who falls straight into a room on the 3rd floor of the institute. Tired of Russell's instability, Deadpool jumps from the 3rd floor and throws one of his katanas in the boy's direction, hitting him right in the forehead. Now that Russell is unconscious, the cops put a power-neutralizing collar on him, making it impossible for him to use his abilities. With Russell incapacitated, the director of the institute thanks Deadpool for his heroic act and says that from now on his employees will take responsibility for the boy, but Russell begs to be arrested or taken anywhere other than there. Finding this all very strange, Deadpool stops the employees from touching the boy and begins to analyze him, finding marks of aggression he has suffered on his neck. Upon seeing the wounds, Deadpool asks if they did this and Russell confirms. He then gets up and starts making a speech saying that he doesn't want to be the hero forever, ending with a headshot right in the forehead of one of the employees right after. To avoid receiving the shots, the director and the other employees of the institute hide behind a car until the Colossus manages to immobilize Deadpool. Not understanding what is going on, Colossus threatens to take the life of the anti-hero, who explains that he did it because the youngsters are being mistreated, but the X-Men says that they are not judges and therefore cannot condemn anyone. At this point, the cops put a neutralizing collar on Deadpool, who along with Russell is taken to Icebox, one of the largest prisons for mutants in the entire United States. Inside the icebox, Russell says that they should form an alliance with the strongest one in there, and Wade explains that there is a monster underground that would be perfect for that, but that they shouldn't focus on that right now. As his powers are blocked by the necklace, Wade becomes mortal again and begins to waste away because of his illness, becoming more and more debilitated. Even though he is slowly losing his life, Wade must live normally in prison and spends his days with Russell, but after getting involved in a fight with other prisoners and getting beaten up because of the boy, Deadpool gets tired and says he doesn't want to be friends with him, leaving Russell quite hurt. Just then, a mysterious man sees the report about the incident at the Essex Institute and starts assembling some weapons with his futuristic technology. With everything ready, the man invades the prison and, after discovering the cell where Russell and Wade are, starts advancing towards them, defeating all the security guards he finds along the way. Knowing that his weapons will do nothing against the armored cells, the man goes to the prison control room and sets off a bomb that explodes the computers there, opening all the cells and freeing the prisoners. Thinking that the mysterious man is hunting him, Wade asks Russell to move away and flee to another direction, but when he realizes that the man is chasing the boy, Wade decides that he will protect him and starts to fight. Despite wanting to protect the boy, Wade is very weakened and is at a disadvantage because of his illness, but as they fight, the man ends up shooting Deadpool's collar, which begins to fail, slowly giving him back his immortality and regeneration. With Wade seemingly defeated, the mysterious fellow goes to Russell and prepares to take him out, but just as he is ready to shoot, Deadpool gets up and jumps on top of the man, causing them both to fall to the 2nd floor and the collar to come off for good. Thinking Wade has been eliminated, the bizarre cyborg focuses fully on Russell and destroys the floor beneath him, knocking him to the 2nd floor. But as soon as the boy touches the floor, Deadpool fully recovers and begins beating the stranger with an iron bar. Taking advantage of the gap, Wade takes the enemy's gun and puts it on full power, making a shot that throws the man away. Wade then walks up to his opponent and asks him to explain himself, but the guy just says that his name is Cable and that he came from the future. At that moment, the man uses a magnetism device to draw the gun back to him and fires at the ceiling, knocking over a steel structure that nearly falls on Wade. Determined to stop him, Deadpool continues to go after Cable, getting into another intense fight, but despite having his powers back, the mercenary Chatterbox has his arm broken and his thigh punctured, as well as receiving a punch so hard it makes Vanessa's arcade token fly away. After winning the fight, Cable takes the token as a souvenir of the fight, but Wade refuses to lose the object and gets up to try to retrieve it, but receives another punch with no time to react. With Wade almost completely powerless, Cable asks why he is trying to protect Russell, and unaware that the boy is listening, Wade says he doesn't give a damn about him. Disappointed, Russell rushes to turn himself into the security guards and Wade pulls the pin out of one of Cable's grenades, causing an explosion so loud that they are thrown out of the prison. In the snowy mountains outside, the two begin to roll through the snow and Cable manages to hang on to a rock, but Wade is not as lucky and hits his head on a rock, falling completely unconscious into a frozen lake. As soon as he touches water, Wade once again ends up in that purgatory and begs to be allowed in, but when Vanessa doesn't answer him, he starts thinking about what she said last time and finally realizes that Russell is the place where his heart should be. When he realizes this, Wade once again returns to the human world and, after emerging from the freezing water, goes straight to the bar to create a plan to save him. While talking to Weasel, the bar attendant, the young man learns that the mutants will be transferred to another maximum security prison in a few days. With this information, Wade decides to put together a team to rescue Russell and begins interviewing some people, putting together the team he names X-Force. Now that Wade's team is formed, Weasel leaves the bar and starts walking toward his house when Cable catches up with him to get information. Despite being Wade's friend, Weasel is a coward and tells everything he knows about Russell and the X-Force. In the prison, Russell decides to do what Wade said and steals the pudding from one of the prisoners, causing a big fight in the mess hall. While everyone is distracted by the fight, Russell goes to that monster in the basement mentioned by Deadpool, and delivers his tray of food to it, winning the friendship of said creature. On the day of the transfer, Russell and the other prisoners are put on the transport truck and begin to be taken to the other prison. With the plan in place, Deadpool and the X-Force jump out of the helicopter in order to land on the truck, but due to a strong gale, one by one all of the team members fall to the ground and lose their lives, with the exception of Domino, who with her power of super luck manages to land safely and quietly enter the truck. Inside the vehicle, Domino throws the driver out and takes over driving the truck, but at this point Cable finally appears and also manages to climb into the car. When he is inside, Cable realizes that Deadpool is behind them with a scooter and starts throwing the cabins with the prisoners to try to take him down, but Wade manages to dodge it. At a disadvantage outside, Deadpool tries to jump off his motorcycle and into the truck, but ends up making a mistake and crashing violently to the ground. But luckily for him, as soon as he gets up, he is run over by one of the prison vehicles. On the hood of the car, Wade eliminates the driver and, while using the katana to accelerate the vehicle, uses his other hand to hold the steering wheel. While Deadpool drives the car from the outside, Domino tries to confront Cable from the inside, but is easily defeated. Just as the villain is about to eliminate her, Deadpool finally catches up to the truck and arrives at the last second to save her. The chatty mercenary then asks for his chip back and they begin to fight while Domino gets back behind the wheel. But when she tries to stop the truck, she realizes that the shots have hit the chassis of the vehicle, causing all the brake fluid to leak. While Domino tries to slow the vehicle down somehow, Cable starts shooting at Deadpool, who cuts down the projectiles in midair with his katana, but still gets hit several times. At that moment, Russell manages to open his cabin door with a pen he has hidden in his clothes, and while Cable and Deadpool are fighting, he goes to the monster's cell and frees him. Finally free, the creature, named Juggernaut, comes out of the cell and punches the ground so hard that it opens a crater in the road, causing the truck to overturn. After they fall to the ground, Juggernaut comes out of his cell and walks over to Deadpool, splitting his body in half like a simple candy bar. Without his legs, Deadpool tries to apologize for what he said, but Russell says he doesn't need him anymore and that he will carry on with his revenge with the help of Juggernaut. After this dramatic farewell, Russell leaves while Domino carries Deadpool's remains to the apartment to wait for his legs to regenerate. While they wait, Weasel shows up and tells them that he has been threatened by Cable. At that moment, the villain enters the front door of the apartment, and although everyone thinks he has come to try to eliminate them, the time traveler just asks for help. According to Cable, Russell will eliminate the director of the Essex Institute, and if this happens, he will take a liking to the Thing and become a supervillain, until a few years in the future, his adult version will eliminate Cable's wife and daughter. The man also says that he could handle just the boy, but that since Juggernaut is now helping him, he will need all the support he can get to stop Russell. At this point, Wade asks why he didn't go back in the timeline when Wade was younger to solve this easily, but Cable says that his temporal omnitrix is with some limitations and only had 2 charges, but since he used one to come to this time, he only has 1 left to go back to the future. Knowing that if he had the same opportunity as Cable, he would also come back to save Vanessa, Wade agrees to team up with him to deal with the new villains, but since he doesn't want to get his hands dirty with his friend's blood, Deadpool asks Cable for the chance to talk to Russell before eliminating him. Realizing that even the 2 of them together will not be enough to deal with the Juggernaut, Wade asks Dopinder to take them in a cab to the X-Mansion. There, Deadpool apologizes to Colossus for disappointing him and tells him all about Russell and Juggernaut, but the X-Men refuse to help because they are still upset. Deadpool then says that his heart is also in the wrong place and, even with little chance, gets back into the cab, with which they proceed to the Essex Institute. When they arrive at the orphanage, Wade sees Cable's scorched teddy bear and asks why he carries that object around all the time, but the man replies that that bear is stained with his daughter's blood. At that moment, Russell and Juggernaut knock on the door of the Institute, and even with Deadpool in the X-Force 2.0 trying to convince him to give up his revenge, Russell blows the door open and furiously walks behind the director. While the boy follows his target around the Institute, Cable, Deadpool and Domino stand outside fighting the Juggernaut. Even with the Time Traveler's superpowered weapons and the trio's combat skills, there isn't much they can do, and both Wade and Cable are easily defeated. Alone against the Juggernaut, Domino hits a grenade launcher shot right in his face, but does almost no damage. While the duo catches up to the Juggernaut, Deadpool finally regains consciousness and realizes that Colossus has changed his mind and decided to come to their aid. Since he is the only one who can stand up to the damn Juggernaut, Colossus runs up to him and lands a straight punch to his helmet. Even though he is extremely strong, Colossus is still weaker than Juggernaut and must resort to dirty tactics to have any chance of winning. While an X-Men confronts Juggernaut, Domino enters the Institute and fights with the nurses to save the miners, but thanks to her super luck, the crazies pretty much eliminate themselves. With the staff out of the way, Domino tries to leave the Institute with the little ones, but since the exits are on fire, they are trapped until, trying to hit Colossus, Juggernaut throws a bus through the window, forming a ramp for them to get off. At the same time, Wade and Cable eliminate the nurses outside and finally get to Russell, but even with Deadpool getting in front of the director, the kid doesn't hesitate and uses his powers to attack them, forcing Cable to use his shield to defend them. When he realizes that Russell is determined to complete his revenge, Cable grabs his gun and prepares to eliminate him, but Deadpool forbids him to do so and says that he still has time. While the duo tries to immobilize Russell, Ellie and Yukio arrive at the Institute and rush to help the Colossus in battle. After Yukio immobilizes the Juggernaut's legs with an energized chain, Colossus sticks a high-voltage wire to his backside and Ellie uses her supersonic powers to throw the Juggernaut into the pool, causing him to be electrocuted. With only Russell left to deal with, Wade relents and once again slowly approaches the boy while trying to convince him not to take anyone's life. Even though he accepts the apology, Russell says he doesn't trust anyone and burns Deadpool's back, throwing him away with his powers. Seeing that he has failed in his mission, Wade puts the neutralizing collar on himself and sets out for the final attempt with Russell, but determined to prevent Deadpool from being his first victim, Cable runs to his gun and uses the last projectile to shoot Russell. At this moment, Wade realizes Cable's intention and jumps in front of the projectile that hits his heart. When he sees that Deadpool has sacrificed himself for him, Russell realizes that he was blinded by anger and regrets everything. Automatically, the bloodstains of the bear that is with Cable completely disappear, signaling that the future has been changed and his family has been saved. Knowing that if he continues with the necklace he will soon lose his life, Colossus tries to remove the object from Deadpool's neck, but Wade refuses, claiming that his goals have been completed and that his heart is now in the right place. In his final moments, Wade says goodbye to the new X-Force, especially to Cable and Russell. After saying goodbye to everyone, Wade goes back to Purgatory and finally manages to catch up with Vanessa after trying for so long, but she says it's not his time yet. On Earth, Cable decides to change the fate of the chattering mercenary and uses the last charge of his watch to go back to the time they arrived at the Essex Institute. Outside the orphanage, Cable takes advantage of the moment Wade asks about the bear and places Vanessa's arcade token right where the projectile will catch. In this way, when Wade jumps to save Russell once again, the shot hits right in the token, which absorbs all the impact. As soon as he sees the object, Wade immediately realizes what Cable has done and says that now he will not be able to go back to the future, but the Traveler says that what matters is that his family is safe, and that he will continue to be here for a while. With everything settled, Russell takes Wade's collar off and together they leave, but as they are leaving the Institute, the director appears and begins to offend them for being mutants, but while he is talking, Dopinder appears and runs him over with his cab, ending the director once and for all. Sometime after all this, Ellie and Yukio manage to restore Cable's watch and deliver it to the worst possible person, Deadpool. With the time travel ability, Wade returns to his apartment in time to put a knife to Sergei's forehead before he hits Vanessa, saving her once and for all. After this, Wade returns to the Wolverine origin movie and eliminates his bizarre version of the past, as well as preventing Ryan Reynolds from agreeing to record the Green Lantern. With this, all the evils of the world were averted and Wade could live his life peacefully, at least until he screwed up once again. So, what did you think of this movie? Let us know in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like it and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.